I will invite your leaders, starting with the majority leader on Ng-Cdf judgment, and then followed by the minority leader. If we can give them 5 minutes each, then the rest of the members, you can take 2 minutes each. Is that okay? If we say 5 and you have 1 hour, very few will speak. So let's do 3. Kimani Chungwa, you can go with 5 minutes. Junet, be ready with 5 minutes. Then the rest will do 3, 3, 3.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity. Honorable Speaker, there has been a misconception that Ng-Cdf is a fund that belongs to members of parliament. And indeed, Honorable Speaker, for those who have taken time, and I'm sure many of us have have read the judgment that was pronounced by the courts, there is also that misconception within the courts that Ng-Cdf is a fund as it were before 2015, where MPs are still patrons of this fund, and far from it, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, when I read that judgment, I could not help myself but clearly see that this was more of a political judgment than a legal judgment, Honorable Speaker. The politics in that judgment, Honorable Speaker, speaks volumes. Honorable Speaker, I am not a lawyer, but interpretation of the law is just as simple as reading plain English. With all due respect to the lawyers in this house and seasoned ones like yourself, Honorable Speaker, who has also sat as on the bench. Honorable Speaker, when the judges pronounce themselves on matters touching on CDF and claim that there is duplication of functions between Ng-Cdf and the county governments, Honorable Speaker, that is a language spoken by the Council of Governors, Honorable Speaker. And we should not lie to ourselves that the judges are simply saying what the Council of Governors has been saying. Honorable Speaker, when we recrafted the Ng-Cdf Act from the old CDF Act, the Ng-Cdf Act was very particular that Ng-Cdf will only serve 2 particular functions, that of education, excluding the early childhood education, ECDE, that is a function that belongs to counties. And there is not a single constituency, Honorable Speaker, that I know of where Ng-Cdf money is utilized either to construct or to take care of ECD classrooms in our primary schools, Honorable Speaker. The other function of Ng-Cdf touched on security, and there is absolutely nothing in the county government architecture and the functions under Schedule 4 for Constitution where county governments deal with matters security. It is Ng-Cdf that has helped even in areas where banditry and even acts of terrorism, like in Lamu and other areas, Honorable Speaker, and parts of northern Kenya. It is through Ng-Cdf intervention to establish police posts and police stations, Honorable Speaker, that we have helped the national government in dealing with matters in security. The county governments, even in those very dangerous areas, go to the North Rift, go to northeastern Kenya, there is not a single county government involved in security work, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, because I see my time is over, I just want to plead to our judiciary, Honorable Speaker, that you have no reason as judges to seem popular with governors. Honorable Speaker, because that judgment is just a popularity contest judgment for judges who pronounce themselves, Honorable Speaker, on that matter of Ng-Cdf. But may it be known to them that without Ng-Cdf, there are children in this country who will never access education from the bursaries they get from Ng-Cdf, Honorable Speaker. There are children in this country, Honorable Speaker, who years ago, without CDF, were studying under trees without classrooms. Honorable Speaker, with the recent floods, many of our schools had either classrooms or even Honorable Speaker, I was saying with the last floods, either classrooms or ablution blocks that were swept away by floods, without the intervention of Ng-Cdf, Honorable Speaker, their children would not be in school today, Honorable Speaker. I know we have another chance with the Court of Appeal and all the way to the Supreme Court, Honorable Speaker. And we also have a chance to correct what we need to correct from this House, because we are the law-making House. If we have to recraft another Ng-Cdf Act, let us do it, Honorable Speaker. If we have to anchor Ng-Cdf as we proposed under the NADCO bills in the Constitution, it is high time we now anchor Ng-Cdf, not for the sake of members of Parliament, but for the sake of the people we represent. Those people who have no voice if we don't speak to them. Those people who judges cannot hear unless we speak to the judges. Let us ask our judges to drop the politics, leave Ng-Cdf alone, and allow the children of Kenya to access education, allow the people of the North Rift, allow those who are terrorized by terrorists to live in a country where they are secure.
Junet.
Mr. Speaker, I can't agree more, Mr. Speaker, with the majority leader that this is a political judgment, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is no act of parliament that has been subjected to litigation more than the CDF Act, Mr. Speaker. And this is done basically by people who hate members of parliament. They are not doing it for anything else other than hatred that they have for members of parliament, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when I read the judgment of Mr. Speaker of the court, I was shocked, Mr. Speaker, because in 2013, the same act was subjected to litigation, Mr. Speaker, and at that time they were saying that Parliament is dividing the revenue into three: national government revenue, county government revenue, and the CDF, Mr. Speaker. Subsequently, this House did an amendment and did the division of revenue, where the money was divided between the county governments and the national government, and the CDF was put under the national government, Mr. Speaker. There is no difference between a ministry that is getting an allocation from the national budget of the national government than the CDF, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was shocked to see in the judgment of the court that one of the reasons why they are saying this act is unconstitutional is because Parliament passes 7 names of members of the CDF committee, Mr. Speaker. How many names do we pass here? We pass even names of commissions, we pass names of county secretary, we pass names here, PSS, AG, we pass here even commission of what this is called, commission of communication authority, Mr. Speaker. What is the problem of passing names here? The other thing that has shocked me about this judgment, Mr. Speaker, is that they are saying the term of the fund manager is for 5 years, which is equivalent to 5 years of being a member of Parliament, Mr. Speaker. There are fund managers who have been in office for the last 20 years, Mr. Speaker. I don't know where the judges were reading, they were reading, Mr. Speaker, whether they read the submissions of our lawyers, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am shocked because the judges behaved as though they live in another country, Mr. Speaker. Recently, there was a burial in my constituency, and I must say this, of a judge, Mr. Speaker. And the funeral was conducted in a primary school, and those classes were built by CDF, Mr. Speaker. They were not built by county government or built by anybody else. Mr. Speaker, the way the CDF has changed the lives of Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, every person knows in this country, including judges. Do they not go home? Do they not come from villages in this country, Mr. Speaker? And people, I'm asking the judges on the floor of this House, from the floor of this House, Mr. Speaker. In my constituency alone, there are over 3,000 to 4,000 students who benefit from bursary. Children of single mothers, orphans, Mr. Speaker. Where do they expect us to take those children, Mr. Speaker? If CDF is crap, the best thing I can do is to put those children in a bus and bring them to the homes of the judges, Mr. Speaker, so they can give them fees, so that those children can go back to school, Mr. Speaker. You can't make the lives of Kenyans miserable by just doing a judgment that does not make any sense, Mr. Speaker, according to me. And we are allowed to critique judgment, Mr. Speaker. They had their say, we must have our say here on this floor, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have been a believer, I have been a supporter of the independence of the judiciary, Mr. Speaker. But now I've come to believe that judiciary now is living in an ivory tower, and they must come down from that ivory tower, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the problem in this country about the three arms of government, the other two arms of government, the executive and the legislature, are subjected to accountability through elections after every 5 years. Judges are never accountable to anyone. They are accountable to themselves and to JSC, where majority of the members are judges, Mr. Speaker. And you just wait until you reach 70 or 74 years and you retire. You are not accountable to anybody. How do you want to make the lives of Kenyans so miserable by saying that CDF is not doing anything? Mr. Speaker, CDF is unconstitutional. This is a judgment that has been procured by the Council of Governors, Mr. Speaker. And it is out of egos. They don't want any other money. They don't want any other money to come to the constituencies or to the villages, Mr. Speaker. And what is happening in devolution, you know, all of us and everybody in this country knows. Corruption, pilferage, lethargy, incompetence. The only money, Mr. Speaker, that has touched the lives of Kenyans for the last 20 years is the CDF, Mr. Speaker. And I want to tell the One minute. Mr. Speaker, the name of the fund is Ng-Cdf, national government, Mr. Speaker. It's not county government, it's not judiciary fund, it's not parliamentary fund, it's not anybody's fund. It's the national government money that is going to the constituencies so that it can build schools, it can build classes, it can build police station, and they are saying there is duplication of functions. We don't do anything outside what the national government is doing. Security and education are not devolved functions, Mr. Speaker. Counties don't do that. Will education improve if today's CDF is abolished? Mr. Speaker, we are going to appeal this judgment, but we will also do a constitutional amendment. We have the powers even to amend the constitution. The judiciary doesn't have. You can declare the act unconstitutional as many times as you like, but we will make sure CDF remains in this country, Mr. Speaker. I submit.
Yes, Kainan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was privileged to be a member of parliament before CDF came into being. I was privileged also to see Engineer Karue apply his creative mind, Mr. Speaker, and come up with this unique development initiative, Mr. Speaker. And I've seen what CDF has done. I have represented two constituencies, Mr. Speaker. The number of development projects initiated in my former constituency called Wajir West and my current constituency called Eldas, Mr. Speaker, through CDF is more than the combined development initiative since we got independence, Mr. Speaker. In our place, we say CDF is our government. Mr. Speaker, I want to ask myself, the framers of the current constitution, if you read Article 1, sovereignty has been equated to representation. Who are these busybodies who want to disregard representation, Mr. Speaker, and rubbish the role of the elected members of parliament, Mr. Speaker? I have one message for you. We have seen the actions, the inactions, the activities, the inadvertence of these busybodies, whoever they are. Can you stand firm? Can you stand firm as members of parliament? It's not about the usual complaining, no. Can you stand firm, bring a constitutional amendment so that we entrench the Ng-Cdf in the constitution so that we remove it from the ambit of this gullible and vulnerable busybody, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, for how long shall we deny Kenyans the right to enjoy a piece of the national cake, Mr. Speaker? I'm shocked and dismayed, Mr. Speaker, to see a ruling, and ideally, Mr. Speaker, the role of the three arms of government, Mr. Speaker, is interdependent, is to support each other for the good of the well-being of Kenya, Mr. Speaker. But when you have a targeted approach, Mr. Speaker, to rubbish one arm, then doesn't add value. Mr. Speaker, finally, what I want to say is this. When the members of parliament are elected here, or the framers of the current constitution, Mr. Speaker, some of the functions have been devolved. After this, you will hear provisional administration is illegal because Ng-Cdf only covers education and national security. Are those two functions, Mr. Speaker, county functions? They are not county functions. These are national functions. So, colleagues, if you want to remain relevant, I know it's not the ambit of the members of parliament because we have delinked Ng-Cdf from the member of parliament. It's completely an independent entity. That still is being pushed to the member of parliament. I beg you, if you want to remain relevant, if you want your constituents to develop, stand firm, wake up tomorrow, put your heads together, put this entity, entrench it in the constitution so that there is no room for any busybodies. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Kadhambi. Charity Kadhambi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Sir, allow me to contribute like my colleagues. In this country, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would wonder which Kenyan has not seen the changes which CDF has really brought in this country. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, my issue is to remind people that what CDF is doing in this country, I doubt if there is another fund which is doing what CDF is doing. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, with the changes, with the poor children we are taking to schools, with the schools we are changing, with the security offices we are constructing, with the administration offices we are doing, Mr. Speaker, sir, I am so much worried that there is people up to now, they have not seen what is happening. And Mr. Speaker, sir, I am contributing because myself being the second term member of parliament in Joro constituency, what I have done in my constituency, Your Excellency, Mr. Speaker, sir, for the first term is what has brought me the second term. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I'm standing here to remind our colleagues, let us unite this journey. This is war against development. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is now the high time we united as members of parliament. We change even if it means changing the constitution, so that we can make sure that the CDF is well anchored in the constitution. Mr. Speaker, sir, we have gotten a lot of challenge every time. Whichever time we are doing our works as members of parliament from single constituencies, actually we are not at peace, because every time we are distracted by so many cases in courts. And Mr. Speaker, sir, as I'm standing here today, Kenyans are asking, are they safe? Are their children going to go to schools? Are they expecting more constructions of schools when they have seen the challenge which has taken recently in the courts? Mr. Speaker, sir, let me confirm that Kenyans are worried that today there is a threat for the CDF. Therefore, for colleagues, please let us wake the 290 constituencies. Let us protect the development. Let us fight for our children. Let us fight for the development for this constituency through CDF. Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you very much. It is for us to unite and say no to whoever is against our development matters. Thank you.
Yes, Chairman CDF. I would have thought you should have been the last to speak on this.
Oh.
Yes. You are the committee chair. Listen to others. You'll speak last. Naisula. Chairman, hold your horses. I've been seeing you menacing me with gestures.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to rise to also contribute on the judgment on Ng-Cdf, Mr. Speaker, and to say that we cannot overemphasize the importance of Ng-Cdf in our constituencies, Mr. Speaker. There is this notion among many people that Ng-Cdf is pocket change for members of parliament. I want to say without fear or favor that if there is one fund that there is accountability for, it is Ng-Cdf. Ng-Cdf goes to the constituency with an AIE, with what it is supposed to do, and the money follows that AIE. And so even when auditors come to the ground, Mr. Speaker, they have to go and see whether that classroom has been built. They have to go and see whether that police station has been built. They have to see whether that child has gotten bursary, and that is the truth on the ground, Mr. Speaker. And if there is anybody who thinks that there is a member of parliament who is misusing these monies, Mr. Speaker, we have investigative bodies, Mr. Speaker, which we should go and follow up on those monies and that member of parliament, Mr. Speaker. But we cannot be blanketly be condemned to be corrupt, that Ng-Cdf is our money, Mr. Speaker, when that is not the point, Mr. Speaker. We can also not be a house of lamentation We are the ones who make the laws in this house, Mr. Speaker. We will not wait for NADCO report to entrench Ng-Cdf in the Constitution. We should extract Ng-Cdf from NADCO reports so that we bring it to this house as a standalone issue to be entrenched in the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. Because we might wait for NADCO reports until God knows the 2 years are over, the 13th Parliament should be remembered as the house that entrenched Ng-Cdf in the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, so that this cannot be a ping-pong game depending on who is on the bench, Mr. Speaker. The second issue, the hate that Honorable Junet has talked about is true. People just generally hate members of parliament. And so I wouldn't even be surprised after it has been entrenched in the Constitution, the judiciary saying it is unconstitutionally inside the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, because of just the hate people have towards members of parliament, Mr. Speaker. To conclude, I want to say this, now that I'm on the floor, Mr. Speaker, to remind the executive, Mr. Speaker, that there is one cabinet secretary position which has not been filled in this country, Mr. Speaker. We are
KJ.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it is to say that the courts...
Order, KJ. Yes, so give her 1 minute.
Please allow me to say this, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. 1 minute. There is a position of a cabinet secretary that has not been filled in this country, and I want to remind the executive, just in case they have forgotten, we do not have the cabinet secretary of gender and affirmative action, Mr. Speaker, in this house, Madam Speaker, sorry. If it was another ministry, I want to assure you, by today, the replacement of that cabinet minister would have happened. We cannot continue business when we do not have the cabinet secretary of gender in this country, Mr. Speaker. It should be, the cabinet secretary should be appointed like yesterday, Madam Speaker. Even if it is a man, we need a cabinet secretary of gender in this country.
Thank you. What's your point of order, Honorable Donya?
Madam Speaker, I'm just worried Honorable Junet is insisting that it is a man. We have not refused. If it is a man, a boy, girl, what we want is to have a minister for gender in office. We keep on talking about gender mainstreaming, helping our young girls and women. How can we, Madam Speaker? Yes, we know it is CDF, but
thank you. Honorable KJ, you may proceed. You are on the floor.
Madam Speaker, I thank you and I acknowledge the change of guard. Madam Speaker, the courts had their day. Today it is Parliament that has its day to remind the courts that even the courts can err, that they can make mistake, Mr. Speaker. When you read that judgment, Madam Speaker, you notice a fundamental fault in how they were deciding on this matter. One of the bigger issues, Madam Speaker, they were saying that the constituency cannot be a unit of devolution. But Madam Speaker, we all know that Ng-Cdf is not a devolved fund. In fact, the word that she should be using is that national government has decentralized the monies from the center to the 290 constituency, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker. And it is also to disabuse the notion, Madam Speaker, that anyone can imagine that by removing Ng-Cdf, they are punishing a member of parliament. Madam Speaker, in the Goreti South constituency, the Ng-Cdf is not to benefit John Carrier. The Ng-Cdf has renovated all primary schools in the constituency. It has built in excess of 7 new schools. Out of the 12 new schools in Nairobi, 7 of them are in the Goreti South constituency. Madam Speaker, it has improved the working status of the officers in Gao, made sure that our people are served in dignified places. So, Madam Speaker, I would want to agree with all the members who are saying that Article 95 and 96 allows this House to make laws, Madam Speaker, and no other entity can make laws. And if that be the case, then we, as the 13th Parliament, must agree that we are the people who are going to entrench this Ng-Cdf in the constitution so that it can continue bettering the life of members. Finally, Madam Speaker, we all agree that even if we have devolved units called counties, the devolved units called counties has served more as devolution for corruption rather than devolving services to the people. Madam Speaker, Nairobi City County receives in excess of 30 billion Kenya shillings from division of revenue and monies that they raise as own revenue. That means that in the Dagoretti South constituency every year, I should be feeling the impact of around 2 billion Kenya shillings coming from Nairobi City County coffers, Madam Speaker. But if you go to the constituency called the Dagoretti South constituency, what you shall find are the projects that have been put up by this most visible, best managed and most effective fund called the Ng-Cdf. So, Madam Speaker, let's do what is necessary. Let us entrench Ng-Cdf in the constitution to make...
Honorable members, allow me to recognize the presence of Kiwanzani Academy from Kitui West constituency, Kitui County, who are seated in the public gallery. On behalf of the members of the National Assembly, we welcome you to Bunge. Thank you. The Honorable Amolo Otiende.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, first, let me recognize and thank the team of lawyers that did this matter pro bono. Honorable Chepkonga, Honorable Mrugara, Honorable Kaluma, Honorable Mutuse, Honorable Muriu, Honorable Makali, Honorable Osoro, Honorable Mogaka, and myself. Madam Speaker, we have no doubt as a team that the decision rendered by the High Court is wrong on so many fronts. It is wrong on the role of the MPs in CDF. It is wrong on the role and term of the fund account managers who are not in any way connected to the MPs. It is wrong on following the obiter dicta by the Supreme Court when the Supreme Court rendered an opinion on an act that had since been repealed and therefore is not binding. And for the avoidance of doubt, Madam Speaker, we have already agreed that we will appeal that decision. The good thing is that after declaring the act unconstitutional, the court did a suspension of the declaration of invalidity for 2 years. That is enough time for us to prosecute a number of things. It is enough time for us to prosecute the appeal. You will remember, Madam Speaker, that previously the High Court declared the previous act unconstitutional. The Court of Appeal did not agree and affirmed it, and only the High Court then agreed with the only the Supreme Court then agreed with the High Court. It is quite possible that we might follow a similar trajectory on this matter. Madam Speaker, secondly, and this we have said before, the ultimate solution to all this push and pull is amendment of the Constitution. And that amendment, Madam Speaker, we have already agreed, even in the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, that we want to make it a standalone amendment away from the entire NADCO report. It is our view as the lawyers and at the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee that we can execute that amendment without requiring a referendum. Madam Speaker, the beauty is that once we have entrenched the Ng-Cdf, then the constitutional provision cannot be unconstitutional. It will be along the lines of having entrenched the judiciary fund, and that then should be a proper cushion. But once we do the amendment, we will then again have to redo the act itself by bringing a new act which will be in line with the amendment. Madam Speaker, a lot of people do not understand, and if you allow me just one more minute, Madam Speaker, that before CDF and before devolution, before decentralization, the situation was very, very bad. You had a situation where there were parts of this country that would not even get 1 cent. It is only the CDF that goes to all the 290 constituencies in this country. It is only through devolution that... Just as I'm finishing, Madam Speaker, we must also pass a message to, as I'm closing, Madam Speaker, the real drivers of these cases is not even the two people who went to court. It is the governors, it is the Senate, and there's some particular NGO called the Institute for Social Accountability that has kept bringing these cases on instigation of these others. We must tell them that even if these funds went away, they will not go to the governors, they will not go to those who think that they will get it, not even the Senate. It will re-centralize and you will not see that money. And with that, Madam Speaker, let us also demand that the balance of monies that should have been given in the last financial year, about 50 million that is owed to each constituency, be now released so that we can do the projects that ought to have been done. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Wakili Robert Edwin Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to ventilate on this very wrong judgment which has been passed against Ng-Cdf. Madam Speaker, I was part of the legal team which represented Parliament on this matter. We were able to ventilate on a number of issues, and to our surprise, Madam Speaker, out of 9 key issues, none of them the court was able to appreciate, despite the fact that we were able to put in the proper legal position, the constitutional position, but the court came in as a biased court. Madam Speaker, my worry and concern, because you know, in any trial, you are able to get the things which are not being said, but the petitioners, whose name has been alluded in this house, the Council of Governors, our Senate, they have one key issue which I would say is a sibling jealousy. In this sense, Madam Speaker, a council could stand before the judges and say, look, now you members of Parliament, this money you'll be using as pocket money to campaign for it. It tells you the kind of conversations that are being said behind our back. But as Speaker, I think it's important that we put it very clearly that Ng-Cdf is a fund under the national government, and the national government can be able to spend that money as provided by the Constitution. Second, Madam Speaker, I noted one of the key drivers of Ng-Cdf and success level is because 90% of the fund goes to development, things and tangible things which benefit the common person. In the opposite, the County of Governors, they know very well, they spend 90% of their money doing trips and doing other mundane things which has no benefit to our people. Madam Speaker, I'm trying to urge the members of Parliament, let us not lament like people who have no hope. This Parliament has power to ensure that we're able to cure this issue or these myriad issues of litigation against Ng-Cdf once and for all. Though, Madam Speaker, we are going to the Court of Appeal. We have a strong case. We know we can be able to win it. But the ultimate goal is to ensure we have entrenched the fund in the Constitution in such a way that in the future nobody can come back and claim that the fund is unconstitutional.
Let me give the Honorable Millie Odhiambo, then I'll come to you, Honorable Osoro.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Madam Speaker, I just want to inform Senior Counsel Honorable Tiende Amolo that part of the reason they're having problems is the entire legal team was men. There's no women, and yet there are brilliant women lawyers like me in this house. Next time, put us there, and we'll help you. Secondly, Madam Speaker, in areas that have been predominantly opposition, the only fund you can rely on that is changing lives is CDF. Third, Madam Speaker, in my own constituency, I have seen us move from mud-walled, grass-thatched schools to permanent schools. I would want to encourage the judges and people who live in cities to do an immersion in the village so that they know the reality. Yes. A lot of people do not know the reality on the ground. The people who are posh in cities, the lawyers and the ones who are lofty, go to the ground and learn the reality. Madam Speaker, I would also want to say that in relation to the law, our judges, especially Supreme Court, have been very liberal and progressive in interpretation of the Constitution. That is why they even interpreted the Constitution to include gay rights. But when it comes to development, then they start telling you, Montesquieu, separation of powers. I have no problem with separation of powers as espoused by Montesquieu many years back. But Montesquieu does not come from my village, Kolo, in Rusinga Island. He does not know what people go through. That is a very good concept, that something good is finally coming out of Africa, which is the issue of Ng-Cdf. Development. And Madam Speaker, I was just discussing with Honorable Tiende Amolo that we must be brave as lawyers. And if there is one legacy we must leave in this house, is to entrench the fourth role of a member of parliament in this country, which is development. If it does not come through Ng-Cdf, it will come through my pocket. That is the reality. And the members that came before us were overwhelmed. That is why they promoted this. Right now, the role of MPs has totally been removed. But MPs are still being harassed. Put it and make MPs have a role. I have no excuse. Anybody can bash me what they want. But as an intellectual and as a bright lawyer, this is one thing I am willing to defend to my grave. Bora usiguze Ng-Cdf. Wengine wanasema bora usiguze mulima, mimi bora usiguze Ng-Cdf. Hapo tutapigana.
The Honorable Member for South Mugirango, Honorable Sylvanus Osoro.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I also want to associate myself with the sentiments that have been made by my colleagues. And I also do not want to delve so much on the judgment that was delivered last week, because I've actually gone through it. In all aspects, I'm actually against it by all standards, because it actually does not meet jurisprudential, authority in all aspects. I mean, the learned judges, Honorable Speaker, only focused on what we call the school of thought in jurisprudence that we call positivism, where they are so keen on unnecessary positivism, and they ignore the element in a very social matter, ignore the socialism jurisprudence, ignore the natural law in all aspects, Honorable Speaker. But I do not want to go that direction, Honorable Speaker. But of importance, Honorable Speaker, for me, it is the character of the Council of Governors. Honorable Speaker, Ng-Cdf is 2.5% of the national budget. Each constituency gets about 130 million thereabout when you do tabulation. County governments get a minimum of 15%. In fact, this house gave them in the last financial year 25% last financial year. About 25 or 26% thereabout. In the last financial year, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, when you do tabulation, you'll realize that in the 2.5% that we get, or the constituencies get in terms of the Ng-Cdf, each constituency gets about 120 million at the highest, or 140 million shillings. Honorable Speaker, with the allocated amounts in the counties, some counties that get about 11 billion in the shared revenue, place in their budget 500 million for the office of the governor's expense. 500 million. But Ng-Cdf for the consumption of the common mwananchi, only 100 million. With 11 billion in some counties, and even some of them getting up to 15 billion, you will actually need a microscope, and I've said this several times, to see what governors do. But they were the first people to go in court, Honorable Speaker. They applied to be interested parties in this matter. They even wrote a letter to the Chief Justice. And in now very common character and demeanor of the current court, Honorable Speaker, they've applied what we call judicial activism, populist rulings, populist judgments, where they now get their jurisprudence from Facebook, from social media, from messages they get, and sometimes from some political leaders who are against very important concepts.
Order number 15, the Energy Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 42 of 2023, second reading, division. Order, Majority Leader.
Honorable Senators, I'll proceed to put the question that the Energy Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 42 of 2023, be now read a second time. You may proceed to vote.
Ban Parliament because we have no business being here. Madam Speaker, it is disappointing and I'm praying that they change their mind.
The Honourable Member for Mwingi West, Honourable Charles Busia. Pressing the bell, the intervention.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just want to join my colleagues in what they have said. CDF doesn't belong to members of parliament. CDF belongs to Kenyans. CDF, we have got a testimony of the number of people who have been educated, orphans who have become doctors, orphans who have become pilots, orphans who have become lawyers because of the matter of the CDF, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just followed the ruling in the court. And it seems majority of the three judges, actually, they don't have even children in this country. Because they are rich, they think they can only educate their children in London without depending on CDF, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, removing the CDF out of this country is going to be travesty of justice because it is the only fact we have seen in all over the constituencies, in all the villages in this country, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is high time we educate the judiciary that money, the CDF money is not for members of parliament. We need to support it. I ask the fellow colleagues, let us move very fast. We'll entrench this fact in the constitution. Let us move very fast, even change the act, even anything that is contagious for these facts, Madam Speaker. I want to support my colleagues and we are not going to let the CDF to go anywhere. Madam Speaker, with those few remarks, I support.
The Honourable Didi Raso, Member for Saku. Still time, it will get to
Thank you very much,
and we can speak for
Honourable
2 minutes,
Speaker.
More people will participate.
Honourable Speaker, I have this belief that judges and lawyers are the best people in town. But sitting back and listening to that judgment, I have my own doubt that our judges, I think, are not well informed. They do not understand the chemistry, the history, and the character of this country. Without CDF, the children of the Dasanach, the people who live on the shores of Lake Turkana, will not be able to go to school. The Elmolos, the Sakuyes of Dabel. For those of us from the pastoralist communities, the marginalized, we feel that CDF is the fund that has arrived. When on just the span that 3 judges can sit at the bench and say this is unconstitutional. Unconstitutional to who? CDF is about the people of this country. If there are no people, then there's no constitution. What does the constitution serve? Madam Speaker, as a house, we have a duty. Our responsibility is to make laws for this country, and the best laws for that matter. And we must enact the laws for CDF, that it must be enacted in the Constitution, so that those judges must feel that the House has powers to do what is right for the people of this country. Madam Speaker, without CDF, 3/4 of the children of Marsabit today are not going to school. If no CDF, there will not be enough school in the pastoralist areas. But what the MPs have done is to think around, to think out of the box, to allow the people to settle and to allow schools to be put up. Education is the greatest equalizer. If no CDF, then there will be no that equality. For that reason, I agree and I accept what the honorable lawyers who represented us in court are saying. Let us move with the speed and enact the national government CDF in our constitution. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Member for South Imenti, Honorable Shadrach Mwiti, who was actually the first this afternoon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Education is a pillar in this country, and for this country to prosper, education is very important. Secondly, Madam Speaker, security is vital to protect our people, and Ng-Cdf is very critical for us to make education and security. Madam Speaker, I concur with my fellow honorable members that Ng-Cdf is very important to be dispersed through the honorable members of this House. Madam Speaker, there is a perception, especially from the county government, that the members of the National Assembly don't utilize the funds in the right way. Madam Speaker, if you assess our constituencies, you will find that most of the projects are done by the members of the National Assembly and not the county government. Madam Speaker, interference of the Ng-Cdf means crippling development in the constituencies, and also, Madam Speaker, it means bringing down the central government. The funds from the Ng-Cdf are from the central government, and there is no relationship between the Ng-Cdf and the funds in the central government. Madam Speaker, I support that the act should be entrenched so that we can have the funds having disbursed or having no more interference in the future. Madam Speaker, it is frustrating when the legal fraternity is interfering with Ng-Cdf, knowing very well that the children of this country, the bright students, and also the disadvantaged students are highly supported by the Ng-Cdf. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Member from Mbeere North.
Madam Speaker.
Then after that, it's you, Honorable Oundo.
Madam Speaker, thank you. CDF has played a very critical role when it comes to the marginalized areas, Madam Speaker. We have many constituencies, many areas in the Republic of Kenya which are extremely marginalized. Recently, Madam Speaker, I went to ensure a school which has mud-walled classrooms in my constituency last week to ensure we change the face of that school. And those photos, Madam Speaker, when I posted them on my social media, many Kenyans could not believe that we have such kind of schools in some of our constituencies. Without CDF, Madam Speaker, many children who are going through CBC curriculum will not be able to enjoy an environment where they can nurture their talent as far as CBC curriculum is concerned. We not only have such kind of primary schools at the moment in our constituencies, in marginalized areas, but we need to change the face of such kind of schools. If we don't have CDF, Madam Speaker, most of our communities, most of the children of the very poor in marginalized areas will remain disadvantaged, will remain in big problems, and they will not be able to achieve what they are supposed to achieve, because these are, in most of these marginalized areas, you'll find we have very bright kids who can go even to Afant through scholarship if they go through the training process, the schooling process in the most appropriate way. Madam Speaker, I want to rebuke the judgment which was made by the 3 judges. It's high time this House come up with the amendment of the Constitution so that we can entrench CDF in the Constitution, so that kids, children of the very poor can also be able to enjoy the education which other kings of the rich are enjoying. It can't be. It's only in academies where we have proper running atmosphere. Even in those areas, the kings of the very poor, they also deserve proper environment where they can nurture their talent, they can nurture their skills, and they can be children of the world. They can be able to work in every corner of our nation. Not only of our nation, but every corner of the world. Madam Speaker, I support what the members have said, and we need to craft.
The Honourable Member for Funyula, Honourable Ounda.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, for this opportunity. Let me take this opportunity to sincerely thank our colleagues who stood in for us during this long, odious battle to save the lives of the people of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, I attended the judgment that Friday, and we left with the heavy legs, heavy heart, and I can see my friend Droppings was here with him, and I sincerely felt that it was extremely unfair on the tone and the wording and the way the 3 judges dispensed of the matter. Honorable Speaker, I want to tell the people of Kenya very, very clearly. Number one, the import of the judgment was that a constituency is not a service delivery center. So it means essentially any person who votes in a constituency is simply a voting machine whose voice cannot be listened in the eyes of the judicial officers. They simply said, Honorable Speaker, they only recognize the counties. They do not recognize the constituencies. In their own words, they say that constituency is merely a center of representation, but not a center of service delivery. So therefore, people of Funyula constituents, for example, cannot come together and go anywhere and demand development. They'll be told by virtue of that judgment, you have no local standard, whether that's right or not, to demand any development. Honorable Speaker, I want to take the judges through history. We used to have rural district focused development. And Honorable Speaker, you saw the inequitable distribution of resources in this country. Up to now, Honorable Speaker, there are parts of this country, they have never seen piped water. There are many parts of this country, Honorable Speaker, if it wasn't for CDF, they will not even have a classroom in their constituencies. And we want to appeal to the judiciary. Do not live in ivory tower. Just come down here and realize how bad things are. Come down here and see the importance, the impact of Ng-Cdf. Compare with the 12 or so years of devolution, and let's do a comparative analysis, Honorable Speaker. It does not require anybody to do anything. You simply have to appreciate. At times, the law judicial activism must be laced with public policy, public interest, Honorable Speaker. I want to urge our colleagues, time to lament is now gone. We must save the people of Kenya from these busybodies in wherever they are. It's time.
The Honorable Member for Lamu East, Honorable Rueda Obo.
Asante Bispika. Nami nipate nafasi nizungumze kuhusu hii Ng-Cdf. Ng-Cdf kwa wengine, kwa maeneo bunge mengine, ndio pesa peke yake unatarajia. Kama tuseme kama Lamu East na constituencies na maeneo bunge mengine mengi ambao wametengwa. Hapa tukiangalia rekodi, ukiangalia mambo kama kwa mfano stima bunge hii katika mwaka uliopita pesa ya bajeti iliyopangwa, utaona eneo bunge la Lamu Mashariki imepewa milioni 4 na maeneo bunge mengine kuna eneo bunge moja limepewa milioni 450. Hii pesa ya CDF, Ng-Cdf, ndio pesa ikitolewa hakuna ubabe. Kila eneo bunge limepata pesa yake, wanajipangia wale kulingana na zile na sheria inasema. Hivi sahihi pesa ikiletwa hapa national government, sisi itakuwa kwenda mbio, maeneo bunge mengine itabakishwa nyuma zaidi, tutatengwa zaidi. Kama haya ambao upande mwingine mbinu ya mambo yote ya serikali inafaa iende kama hivi inavyoenda Ng-Cdf. Kama ni stima, ni ile finance bill walitupa, lakini mimi nilipenda sana kwa sababu ile ilikuwa inasema kila eneo bunge ipate milioni 50. Nilipenda kwa sababu hiyo, ili angalau tupate milioni 50 kila eneo bunge, na zile zinazobakia kama atakuzichezea msondo, kule kwetu kuna ngoma inaitwa msondo, wazichezee. Lakini angalau tumepata kitu ya kufuatilizia. Sasa hii Ng-Cdf kuna kitu angalau eneo bunge inaweza tegemea, na huwa pia haitoshi mpaka tupate huku national government. Lakini ukiangalia zile za national government zinazoenda maeneo bunge yetu utasikitika. Mfano mzuri nimewapatia ni hiyo energy. Angalieni rekodi. Energy imekuwa kigawanywa vipi, na ambapo eneo bunge kama Lamu Mashariki haina hata inchi moja ya national grid. Lakini kama ilikuwa imefuata mtindo kama wa Ng-Cdf, tukiwa na hakika kila mwaka tuna milioni 50, ingekuwa imesonga kitu kidogo. Sahihi tunasikitika na inatuuma sana, na hatujui anatulekeza wapi. Kwa sababu kama leo hivi ninavyokuambia, President alikuwa ametusaidia kwetu kwa sababu elimu iko chini, na madhara ya elimu kwetu yameonekana. Vijana wameonekana wakienda kule wanavyokwenda. Ikabidi tusomeshe walimu, tukapewa nafasi za kupewa kuandikwa kazi, ikawa walimu wamepatikana ni 2 peke yake wa kutoka Lamu Mashariki. Ni hii Ng-Cdf ilikuwa tuokoe, kwa sababu hii Ng-Cdf sasa hii wanasomeshwa
half a minute.
Sahihi walimu wako Islamic Teacher College, wako Shanzu, wako kila pahali, tunasomesha walimu 100 na hii Ng-Cdf ndio isaidie. Hao wanaosoma watapeleka wapi? Ambapo leo hivi niko na pressure kubwa ndugu yake Nurdin, mkwe wake Nurdin ambao ni chairman wa board, amewafukuza huko kwa sababu ya kunipunish mimi, ili kwa nini sijakubali Ishakani na Dar es Salaam Point iende Ijara. Hivi ninavyokuambia imehappen, wanafunzi wamefukuzwa kwa sababu sisi hatujalipa hiyo pesa. Sasa Ng-Cdf ikitolewa sisi tunaenda wapi?
The Honorable Member Makilap.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to say from the onset that the ruling by the judges was actually an affront against the will of the people of Kenya that elected us to this parliament. Members of parliament represent the interests of the people of Kenya. We are the lawmakers. The judges are the law interpreters. It is now time again for members of parliament to let the judges that we are the legislators. We shall make the law again clear so that they should be able to interpret it correctly in pursuit for justice for the people of Kenya. Madam Speaker, Ng-Cdf removed Kenyans from poverty, from fundraisings. Many people were doing a lot of fundraising. Even people were being robbed of their livestock to finance schools, construction of schools, so that they sell animals so that they can be able to build the schools. The same citizens who are paid taxes, you follow them again to get money to build the schools. But when Ng-Cdf came into being, that problem is sorted out. Madam Speaker, this is an affront. If you look at even our brothers who are churches, they don't live in the grassroots. They are urbanites. They live in town places. They enjoy life in the cities, but they are not in the rural areas where the rubber meets with the road. Madam Speaker, over the weekend, through Ng-Cdf, we delivered a bus to one of the remotest places in my constituency called Guigui, a school that has over 1,200 students that have never seen a school bus. Madam Speaker, this is a serious matter that this House must prosecute immediately, because even the children of the brothers and sisters of churches who live in urban areas, they benefit from CDF because they get bursaries, Madam Speaker. Secondly, Madam Speaker, I want to let it know, Kenyans, that members of parliament are not managers. Churches, wherever you are, members of parliament are not managers of Ng-Cdf. Go look for the gazetted Ng-Cdf fund managers. We do an oversight. We do an oversight to ensure that the projects that have been actually planned are actually delivered within time. Madam Speaker, finally, let us now proceed to appeal this matter and come back within these 2 years that they have given us, concretize the law under the Constitution so that we restore order and tell churches.
The Honorable Member for Gishugu, Honorable Githinji.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. And let me start by thanking my colleagues who handled this matter on a pro bono basis. And let me also commit that I will also join them in the next phase, because I believe we have very good grounds of appeal. And in a nutshell, courts cannot dictate how national government would want to use its money. It cannot dictate which units the national government can use in service delivery to the people, and especially on the functions that are exclusively being left at the national level. Madam Speaker, the other issue is that we have seen Council of Governors as parties in this case. The first question is Council of Governors, or does Council of Governors hold any legal capacity? Where is it registered for it to have powers to sue or to be sued? You know, those are some of the issues that can also be raised. And also, these are busybodies. Some of these parties are busybodies who are against public interests. And, Madam Speaker, it is also the right time to utilize this opportunity. I remember Honorable Mule for Matungulu and I were the trailblazers in trying to entrench the CDF into the Constitution. And along the line, NADCO came up, and we agreed that we bring everybody together so that we can be able to discuss. And now comes the second time, and a very good opportunity for us now as members of parliament, with the overwhelming support that we had from everybody in this house, we'll be able now to entrench it in the Constitution, as we also take the opportunity to appeal against the judgment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Ugenya, Honorable David Ochi.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have a different view on the rest of the membership. Madam Speaker, it cannot be said that the CDF is extremely important for the growth of this country. Madam Speaker, as a parliament, we have fallen short. every time we've had a chance to deal with this matter with finality, we move in a hurry, we move with emotion, we don't do what's supposed to be done. We've amended the CDF Act so many times without getting it right. So, Madam Speaker, I believe that we can do this time round with a level head, a cool head, get it right. Let's entrench the constituency as a level of devolution. That's what the court is telling us to do. That if the word is a level of devolution, can we entrench the constituency as a level of devolution? So that it works out. Number two, Madam Speaker, members of parliament representing constituencies, stop going out saying the CDF is your fund. It isn't your fund. Members of parliament say, oh, my CDF cannot be touched. It is not yours. But you go out talking about it as if it's your fund. That's what the court is saying. They don't want members of parliament putting their hands in CDF. I agree with their right. Let's change the law to ensure that what the court is saying is not right is made right. We cannot come here and start saying, oh, judges did this. That is their role. Our role is to make law. Judges' role is to interpret the law. We can't keep abusing judges every time they do something against us. It's not the way you run a country. Madam Speaker, let's move with speed and ensure that the amendment that we're going to propose, like Honorable Kennedy said, clinically deal with Ng-Cdf. Don't put things like Senate oversight or this and that. Let me give you an example, Madam Speaker. There's a bill I brought to this House in the 11th Parliament. Every member almost liked it. It was about moving election date from August to December. But on the voting day, we couldn't raise 233. We had 227, twice. If members believe in this, let's put our heads together. Let's get a good law. Let's not blame everyone else apart from ourselves. It's us to blame. We are the lawmakers. Madam Speaker, I support and I hope that we can soon do this to ensure that the CDF is entrenched right inside the Constitution. I support.
I think second last I'll give the Honourable Member for Masinga, Honourable Mwalio, because the Speaker had given us, I've added another 10 minutes. So I think we have to close now because we had 1 hour.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to be able to speak about the Ng-Cdf. Since I was elected in Parliament in 2017, I've been a member of Ng-Cdf committee, and I have seen a lot. In that committee, we move doing some inspections in all the constituencies. And I think I have been able to go around in almost 100 constituencies. What I have seen, you cannot believe what the Ng-Cdf has done. For example, we've been to Mheshimiwa Bayer's constituency, whereby a school has been built, a 4-story building, 4 buildings, big, using Ng-Cdf. You think that you are in alliance and you go to that school. And it is all done by Ng-Cdf. You go to Awendo, and where the students were passing is a big river, and one day they were swept, I think 20 or 30 of them, by the water, and Ng-Cdf constructed a bridge to the school for the children to be safe as they go to the school. So somebody dreaming that Ng-Cdf can end is just cheating himself, because this is the lifeline of all the constituencies, needy students, and the people. This year alone in September, in my constituency, I had 60 students who had been enrolled, called in the university, and they could not even be able to be admitted because they didn't have any school fees. So we had to record them where they had been employed. 10 had been employed as house helps. We had to call them and pick them from where they are employed to be able to pay for them the startup fees to enter the university. 5 were employed looking after cattle. We had to pick them and take them to the university. Who could have taken those students to school if there was no money for Ng-Cdf? So I think the judges don't live in this country. So they should be told that surely they should be able to look around and see what Ng-Cdf had.
The Honorable Sirma, you're going to have the last bite on this.
So now,
honorable members,
thank you.
I don't have that luxury to give one person more because of the time. It was 1 hour. The speaker added 10 minutes. That time is lapsed.
Put it on. Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity you have given me, being the chair of the National Government Constituency Development Fund Committee of Parliament. I wish to thank the members who have contributed to this, and they have clearly shown that they mind about Kenyans, because Kenya is our country and we love it. I also want to thank the advocates of this House who gave pro bono service to this case. Mr. Speaker, I would say judges who dealt with this matter are failed Kenyans. And we want to say that they should have just resigned today so that they can go and explain, or they could go and face Kenyans so that they know the pain Kenyans are going through in their villages. Mr. Speaker, this fund is an equalizer to all other funding in this country.
The member from Marakwet West, what's out of order?
Out of order. Honorable Speaker, Honorable Sirma has made a very serious remark that the judges must resign today. Honorable Speaker, is it in order, knowing too well that the procedure for removal of judges from office, that the Honorable Sirma makes a remark to the effect that the judges who made the ruling must resign, knowing that the judiciary in this country is independent and there is a procedure for removal from office of a judge? Honorable Speaker, that remark must be withdrawn and should not be on record.
Of course, Honorable Sirima, you must withdraw that remark if indeed you made it.
I said they have failed Kenyans, and if their conscience is right.
Order. Honorable Sirima, did you say the judges must resign for making this judgment? I said they should resign. Then did you say they must or should?
Should. I said they should, based on the consciousness of what they did against Kenyans.
Go ahead with your submission.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, CDF is an equalizer of development in this country. There are sections of this country who have been left behind, but CDF has brought them to be equal to other areas. Mr. Speaker, this fund is audited by 6 institutions. So therefore, when they say there is theft, I think it's a very wrong notion. Mr. Speaker, the judges mentioned that the CDF fund account managers, their term in the constituency is based on the term of parliament of the member of parliament. It is wrong, and they got it all wrong, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, all what we know is that according to the act, the fund managers are moved from one place to the other based on their performance in various areas. Mr. Speaker, also the mistake they have done is to say that we are dividing revenue based on the national cake of the country. We are only taking money from the national government section of the amount of money which are allocated to the national government. So, Mr. Speaker, all this is wrong, and we want to say the governors who have gone ahead to fund these cases against the CDF, Mr. Speaker, it is time we bite the bullet also, that we should also move a motion and amend the constitution to abolish these counties, because if there are people who are corrupt in this country are governors. There is no governor who finishes his term without going through court as he goes home. So they have stolen and they have been found to be guilty in where they are. So, Mr. Speaker, it is time Kenyans thought about it and we amend the constitution, abolish the 47 counties and give us a lesser counties which are manageable with very few thieves. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Few thieves, no thieves. Next order.
Order number 10, report on the consolidated fund services expenditures for the supplementary estimates 1 for the financial year 2024-2025. Mover to reply.
Honorable Makali Mulu, you are to reply to this motion.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to start by thanking all the members who contributed to this important motion. The motion on expenditures on the CFS, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, just to remind the members, because I know it's a long time since we debated this, in the supplementary budget 1, the CFS expenditures, Honorable Speaker, the only item which changed was the item on pensions, where we were requesting that we get additional 23 billion to take care of the arrears and also take care of some amount which had not been factored in for civil servants who have retired. So I want to appreciate the members, but it's worth also noting, Honorable Speaker, the CFS expenditures in totality have been increasing year in, year out. And what is happening, Honorable Speaker, that is really trying to restrict our fiscal space in terms of getting money to spend on other important activities in the country. So even as I reply to this motion, Honorable Speaker, it is important that all of us as Kenyans, and more so under the leadership of Treasury, it is important that we very closely monitor what is happening with our CFS expenditures. And the highest expenditure in this area is the public debt. So issues of public debt, Honorable Speaker, continue to be issues of concern, issues of national importance, and I think as a House, we should be also putting our voice into this matter so that we allow more fiscal space in terms of expenditure. With those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I beg to reply and once more appreciate all the input from the honorable members. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I do reply.
Makali Mulu, you want to come back?
Yeah, Honorable Speaker, I wanted to come back, and I want to, I'm standing on standing order number 53, Honorable Speaker, where I want to, 53, Section 3, where I want to request that we defer the putting of this question to another day, Honorable Speaker, if you allow. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, honorable members. The decision on this motion is deferred to the next time the matter is listed in the order paper. Next order.
Order number 11, motion. Public petition on funds spent contrary to the provisions of Article 223 of the Constitution. Mover to reply.
The Honorable Mbai.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this evening I stand to reply to the motion which was occasioned by a petition which came to our committee regarding expenditure on public funds under Section 223 of our Constitution. Mr. Speaker, this was done. We went, we listened to the petitioner, we listened to several witnesses, we did our investigations, and we brought the report to the House. Consequently, we moved a motion, and Mr. Speaker, allow me to appreciate all the members who contributed to the motion, and also finally gave it a broader adoption for the report. Mr. Speaker, the country lost over 400 billion shillings from the report we tabled, and the House, Mr. Speaker, adopted the motion, and that gave a broader adoption, because we have 15 members of the committee and the House has over 300 members. So, Mr. Speaker, for the members to sit in the House and give time to discuss and adopt this report, Mr. Speaker, it has given it a wider strength to prosecute the issues going forward, because now it has been forwarded. It will be forwarded to the implementation committee. Mr. Speaker, as I wind up, I'm grateful for even the leadership of the House. They all contributed, and from both sides, and also they did very well. Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply.
Is Honorable Mutembei?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, following Standing Order number 53.3, I beg we defer putting the question to another date.
Thank you so much, Honorable Mutembei. Honorable members, just like the previous motion, the decision on this particular motion will be made the next time this particular matter is listed in the order paper. Next order.
Order number 12, the Coffee Bill, Senate Bill number 10 of 2023, second reading, resumption of debate.
Honorable members, debate on this bill had commenced, it had been moved, it had been seconded, and the Honorable Mogaka was on his feet. I know that he's in the House. This is the coffee bill. And this is a chance for those who want to do work for coffee to stand up. Honorable Mary Massey. Do you want to speak to the coffee bill?
Oh, I was queuing for a different one.
Okay.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Okay. Honorable Ngusia. Honorable Gichimu, go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this coffee bill. Coffee bill is a very important, coffee is very important, a great item.
Order. Honorable Mawadi, who gave you the chance to speak? This chance is for the member for Honorable Gishimu of Gishugu.
Mr. Speaker,
You didn't even request for a chance.
I did. I've been waiting.
Order. Honorable Gishimu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for confirming that this chance belonged to me. There is only one Honorable Gishimu member for Gishugu in this parliament, so I was wondering. But, Mr. Speaker, this is a very, very, very important legislation for the people of Gishugu and Kirinyaga at large. Honorable Speaker, I'm a coffee farmer myself, and I also represent very many coffee farmers in my constituency. It's one of the backbones and one of the main economic activities in my constituency. And that is why it is very, very important for me to contribute to this bill. Honorable Speaker, this bill, in part, But before I contribute, let me first of all say that this bill came before this House, or a bill similar to this came before this House in the 12th Parliament, and this House deliberated on this bill. We ably passed the bill with amendments, as having gone all the relevant stages of the lawmaking, and it was subsequently submitted to the Senate, where it died before the lapse of the last Parliament. And it was revived in the Senate, and actually it captured most of the issues that we were able to deliberate in the 12th Parliament. So it's a good opportunity now that it has come early enough that we be able to debate on it and pass it into law, so that the coffee farmers in this country can benefit out of this bill and this law after it has been signed as an act of Parliament. Honorable Speaker, the establishment of the board is a very, very important aspect of this bill, which actually runs from section 4 to 22. But Honorable Speaker, while I agree with most of the provisions, I will be proposing an amendment to indicate that the nominees that are supposed to be nominated by the Council of Governors, who ought to have knowledge in coffee matters, also ought to be farmers. Because it is not defined what is knowledge in coffee matters. I might have just read a book about coffee, and that can make me a person who has a knowledge in coffee matters. So for the farmers to have better representation from the unions, from the Council of Governors, I believe those two nominees by the Council of Governors, on top of having knowledge in coffee matters, also ought to be farmers. Another area that I will also be seeking an amendment is to exempt the farmers who are appointed by the largest union of farmers or organization of farmers to have 3 years experience in management. That will lock so many farmers who can be qualified, because farmers are supposed to be, their experience is in farming. It is not in management. So, Honorable Speaker, that is an area that I feel we need to exempt that class of people, or farmers, so that they are not locked out of the board. Honorable Speaker, I'm also delighted to see that part of the functions of the board is on market intelligence and market promotions for coffee in the international market. And going through the mygovernment.co.ke, I've also seen an article whereby Keproba and AFA have already signed an agreement for export promotion and market intelligence in coffee matters. And that is a reform in the right direction towards promoting and helping our farmers in this country to be able to command the already established market, and also to create or to come up with the new markets so that our farmers can be able to increase their earnings. Because one of the problems that we've been facing is that we have over-relied on the traditional markets in the coffee sector. It is the right time we empower those agencies in this country who spend and use taxpayers' money, like Keproba. Keproba was born out of merging of the Kenya Export Promotion Council and Brad Kenya, so that it can be strong enough to be able to market Kenyan products abroad, promote Kenyan products. And I think this is the high time that this agency is well funded so that it can take Kenya to the next level. Actually, in this country, Honorable Speaker, we have signed so many agreements. Yeah, we have signed the Kenya-EU trade agreements, the Kenya-UK trade agreements, but who is following up on these agreements to make sure that we utilize the chances that we have through this agreement so that we can be able to export as much as possible, build our forex, earn more money for our farmers. So I think this creates an opportunity for us, and especially in matters coffee, to have a body. And much as the board is also mandated in promotion and marketing of coffee, I think, and I will be proposing an amendment, that the 2% that will be levied, that will be paid by the buyers, at least a slice of it ought to go to export promotion in matters coffee. And I think this will really, really help our farmers in solidifying the existing market and also the emerging ones. Honorable Speaker, I will also be proposing an amendment that we delete Section 8 or Clause 8Q, whereby it is proposing that the Cabinet Secretary can also assign other functions to the board. That will be leaving a very open check to the Cabinet Secretary. We should have exhaustive functions that have been given to the board, but we cannot leave the Cabinet Secretary to assign other functions. We cannot further delegate that function. It's only Parliament which has, the Cabinet Secretary can only make regulations, but cannot be left to give the board other functions. Honorable Speaker, there are many, many other areas that I will be looking at, and I'm also happy that the budget for cooperative society has been capped up to 10%, so that the cooperative society do not also exploit farmers. Because some of the cooperative society charge farmers up to even 25% of the proceeds to go to the expenses. This is a reform towards the right direction, and this is a bill worth supporting. There are many, many other amendments. Because it's a lengthy bill, I will not be able to cover each and every clause, but I will be proposing amendments that are pro-farmer, that will help farmers, and that will also help farmers to be able to earn more out of their sweat of coffee, which has been invaded by cartels for many years. It is the right time, and I'm happy also the Capital Markets Authority have also taken its place to sanitize that space of the coffee exchange. I support, Honorable Speaker. Thank you.
Member for Embakasi South. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute in this very important bill. It's way overdue in us putting back Kenya into the face or the competition of the coffee market. Let's consult. So